My name is Chris Wilson, and I'm Managing Director and co-founder of Branding Gear Games, and I'm responsible for development on Path of Exile 1.
Chris, I want to start with a follow-up from the last time we chatted back during E6 in June. We talked about ExileCon, and one of the things we talked about was what would have to happen for everyone to get a second one of these, and now there's one on its way. There's going to be one coming in 2023. So how long has the team discussed bringing back ExileCon?
Well, as soon as we finished the first ExileCon, we knew it was something we had to make a decision on, and the first one was back in November 2019. So of course, a few months later, we were stuck in the pandemic, and it was pretty clear that we would not be able to run any in-person events for a while because the logistical chance of them being cancelled was so high. And so we're in a good situation now where we have Path of Exile 2 coming along really well, and we're quite keen next year to start the marketing train going with ExileCon, give everyone a chance to play the game, show a bunch of journalists and players, and things are looking, touch wood, things are looking a bit safer from the point of view of running large in-person events, and so it just fits perfectly.
I'm so happy to hear that ExileCon's on its way back, but now I want to move on to the expansion, and prior to our press briefing, you kind of gave a backstory as to the name of the expansion and how it's something special for players who have been playing Path of Exile from the very beginning. So can you recount that story for our viewers? What is the meaning behind the name of Lake of Kalandra?
So back when Path of Exile first came out, it included and still includes a very legendary item called the Mirror of Kalandra, and this is incredibly rare. One in many millions of players will find it. And this item duplicates another one, and we provided no explanation of why it's called a Mirror of Kalandra, who Kalandra is, what the story is, why this exists, why it's the rarest and hence most valuable item in the game. And so fast forward like a decade of gameplay later, players are still asking questions on a daily basis about what or who Kalandra is. And so that's the context for why when we announced to our community that the next expansion is called Lake of Kalandra, they got very excited because it's an opportunity for them to learn more about the backstory and origins of the Kalandra character.
The first thing that jumps out at me after seeing the trailer is those reflection effects look incredible. And is that sort of effect something that would have been possible in Path of Exile's first year? And if not, how has the game's engine grown to the point that it can accomplish these technical feats?
That's a great question. So we've been evolving its engine towards Path of Exile 2. So Path of Exile 1 contains the Path of Exile 2 engine, essentially just using Path of Exile 1's assets. And so over the years, the engine has got better and better and better, and we generally don't use it to its full potential because we are targeting a broader range of computers than the sequel necessarily might target. We're wanting to make sure that Path of Exile 1 continues to run really well on everyone who's currently using it. And so we occasionally are able to borrow some cool technology. So an example here with the lake reflections is we basically had a chat to the engine guys, said, what can you do? We really want a reflective lake surface. And they were able to conjure up really good lake surface reflections for us within a day, which was awesome.
And when you say you reach out to a broader range of computers, I imagine you also are talking about the old gen hardware that Path of Exile also runs on. So were there any challenges in trying to bring something like Lake of Kalandra to that old gen hardware of PS4 and Xbox One?
We always have to bear in mind that people are running on consoles that can't be upgraded necessarily. And thankfully, the reflections here are performant enough that it's not a problem. We would have to be careful before bringing too much stuff over, of course. One issue we're constantly aware of is we're now making assets using a lot of the pipeline and techniques we use for Path of Exile 2. So the Path of Exile 1 assets are getting more detailed and better looking year by year. And of course, we have to bear in mind this needs to run on a wide variety of computers and hardware, but it's something we definitely test for internally before we release stuff, and we usually find a good sweet spot.
And moving into the endgame changes, you're bringing back the Trial Master. And what made you want to bring him back, and how has he changed from the last time players saw him?
So during the Ultimatum League, players were able to play these Ultimatum encounters, which was kind of a double for nothing mechanic that the Trial Master set you. And there were many aspects to that people wanted us to bring back. And one of them that was very easy for us to do was to bring back the ultimate boss fight with the Trial Master himself and the rewards that he has. Now, I suspect players are wanting the rewards that he has, but I'm glad that they enjoyed the boss fight. And so we've basically brought him back as a unique map that players can play. And the rest of the Ultimatum encounter itself, we've got an interesting place in mind for the future. We can't talk too much about that, but more of Ultimatum will be coming back over time.
I remember during our prior expansion briefings that you talked about one of the builds that you wanted to make stronger was poison builds. And you've certainly done that this time around with the new Alchemist Mark skill. And you're also buffing up a lot of a lot of the shock builds with new shock skills. So what made you want to focus specifically on the poison and shock builds this time around?
Our team internally switched from archetype to archetype, giving attention where they feel that we need attention. And there are some areas that are harder to fix than others, and these are ones which we felt we could actually make some quite large changes within the scope of this league. And so it's pretty much just internally what the development team felt they were most capable of doing a good job with at the moment, and it lined up well with our release cycle for the expansion, so that's why there are improvements to those archetypes. There's a bunch of other balance changes as well, like a big overhaul of minions and the Trickster Ascendancy, which they also focused some time on, but in terms of new toys to play with, targeting both the alchemist stuff and also the shock/lightning archetypes was the goal of this, of the introduction of new balance content here.
I'm happy you mentioned the Trickster class, because the Trickster Ascendancy class, you said that it went through a bit of an identity crisis before you ultimately settled on the changes that it's getting here, with a focus on defense and speed manipulation. But what were some of the other ideas that the team originally threw out there for this class that ultimately didn't stick?
Well, it's a tricky one because due to the way we have Ascendancies in Path of Exile, there's kind of three ways that the canonical assassin character has to be built. And so the Trickster was always trying to be a bit of a jack of all trades. And unfortunately, it had one passive skill that was just significantly more powerful than other ones, the Ghost Dance skill, which people would build Tricksters entirely to get access to this. And we eventually made that Ghost Dance Ascendancy skill something that all characters could pick on the main passive skill tree to provide more variety so that people didn't feel they had to play a Trickster to get access to this powerful ability. And that unfortunately meant that we basically instantly gutted out what made the Trickster really powerful. It's one thing it was clinging to in terms of identity was gone. And that was really difficult to answer your question, when the team were trying to work out what they wanted the new Trickster to be, we went through a number of iterations of different concepts. It had an energy shield component that we experimented with. We've had various speed manipulation things before settling on the way that we're doing it at the moment. We'd looked at making it, each of the directions we took it often got too close to the other Ascendancy classes. And so we feel we found a sweet spot here. We kind of think of it as the champion, referring to one of the other Ascendancies of the Shadow Ascendancies.
You said there's a lot of things to go over with the new balance patch notes, but are there any other specific changes that you weren't able to touch on during the live stream that you feel players will be excited about?
Well, we posted a character balance manifesto a week ago in order to front run, the player's ability to assess the balance changes and start planning their build. That's something we have been requested over time to give more upfront information on, so that players have a longer time to plan. So there is quite a lot of stuff already in public knowledge about things that weren't covered in the live stream. We just saved a few live stream aspects, like the Trickster changes, for example, so that they could be new and interesting to players to see here. But they do have quite a lot of information about balance changes. It's a pretty changed metagame. We actually didn't change anything in the last expansion from a balance point of view. That was an experiment to see what would occur if we just kept the balance exactly the same, which definitely had its pros and cons. And so this time we've had quite a lot of stockpile changes we wanted to make to a number of different areas.
All right, and Chris, when can players get into the Lake of Kalandra?
So it's launching a week from the time that we record this. So that's on Friday, the 19th of August, Pacific time at 1 p.m. West Coast time. They'll be able to play. Just go to pathofexile.com, download the client or patch your existing one, find it on Steam. It'll be releasing on console the following week. And yeah, we're very keen to play alongside everyone.
And we're excited to explore it. So Chris, thank you so much. And for more on Path of Exile and everything else video games, keep it on Shacknews.